Hi, and welcome to another episode of Socratic Satsang. Our guest today is a white hat, an ethical hacker, an exceptional one at that. He has several feathers in his white hat. We'll get to know some of them over the course of this conversation. But his most recent achievement is that he hacked Microsoft's identity service. It's a pretty big deal. So big, in fact, that he's now a hugely sought after speaker in most tech conferences across the world. He recently spoke at Troopers 25 in Heidelberg, B-Sides Seattle at Microsoft headquarters, and he'll soon be speaking at DEF CON in Las Vegas. I met him around 2 years ago in a philosophy forum that I used to moderate in Victoria, BC. He was this polite, unassuming character who took no space and kept a low profile, but that cover was blown every time he spoke. His thoughts came from a deep understanding and good knowledge of Western philosophy. He was clearly well read and knew his beans. The more I got to know him, the more layers there were to know. Born and raised in Worcester, UK, an Oxford graduate in physics, humble, kind, brilliant, and a few shades of crazy. Welcome, Simon Maxwell-Stewart, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you here. Well, Ellison was recently asked in an interview about his success, and he said he had all the necessary disadvantages in his childhood to make him successful. Let's start with your childhood. Welcome, Simon Maxwell-Stewart.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There's a very generous use of the word ethical. I appreciate that, Vince. Yeah. Great to be here. Mm, cool. What would you guys like to know about childhood stuff?
How was it growing up in Worcester? What was your childhood like? Was it difficult? Did you have any challenges?
Yeah. Worcester is like where Worcestershire sauce is from. That's like a one claim to fame. A little bit south of Birmingham, which is where the Peaky Blinders is from. That's like the other claim to fame, kind of, I guess. And yeah, a little bit of a mixed bag, I would say. Childhood, definitely quite a few challenges in there. Grew up in a like in a fairly small house for how big the family was. Had four older brothers. Had four older brothers and definitely pretty chaotic time, I would say. Because uh, we we did a lot of wild things, lots of stuff. But in reflection, I realized maybe not the healthiest things, and lots of things that even at that time were not the safest of things, and that was pretty apparent then. I would say it's taken me a while and a good amount of therapy to to process kind of what happened to me. Um, just quite a lot of unsafe things, I would say. I think that's like the kind of unifying theme probably is sort of a little bit of chaos and a little bit of stuff that probably shouldn't have happened. I had a dot in my neck. Um, that was that was me and my brothers were playing Dart Wars, and we were kind of deliberately throwing darts at one another. And then I ended up with one in my neck. I ate daffodils and ended up in hospital for eating daffodils.
Oh my God.
I could go on for a while
You got all the time for you.
with some of these stories. It's definitely they made for some good stories, and I guess like as I was growing up, I got kind of quite good at spinning them into like stories that made people laugh. Um, And then I guess as I got older, I realized that like they were a little less funny. I mean, I've still got the nervous laughter, as you can tell about them, but no, like I think yeah, I realized that like actually they had like a bit of a through line um of just sort of a bit of a dysfunctional family. Let's put it that way, in terms of just kind of understanding each other's boundaries and how to kind of like cherish each other, I guess, as like a family unit. And so yeah, that's I think sort of weirdly set me in good stead, in the sense of sometimes having a target that you're working away from is as useful as having a target that you're working towards, kind of thing. So yeah, like I know that a theme that I hold quite like dear to myself, that's like it has got some philosophical roots. Things that's like definitely a connection where I know you've in, is this idea of like unbecoming, and you know, this idea of kind of shedding parts of yourself that you don't want, and not being afraid to like let go of like layers of yourself, kind of thing. I think there's like a lot of like, for instance, in like relationships, right? Like there's a lot of emphasis put on kind of how you shouldn't expect and shouldn't be kind of like expected to like change for someone in a relationship. And I definitely think that's like true and has like a good like element of like truth, in the sense of like it shouldn't be kind of like for someone else, but in terms of your own expectations with yourself, like be that kind of because that you recognize someone else is doing something better and that you know, and is like inspiring. I think like we should just be ready to kind of like let go of like parts of ourselves that are like suboptimal, and that like we can just be like, we can just like rise above if we just kind of let go of that like ego involved with like our attachment to you know, that part of ourselves. So yeah, that's like an element that has kind of held kind of quite dear to kind of help guide me through some of that stuff.
Is there something you would like to share?
I was like sexually abused, and that was yeah, that was a pretty crazy thing to have to unpack. I didn't in any way like deal with it during childhood in any way. Um, it was like something that I missed. Like it impacted like 4 years of school, and I like missed like 2 years like fully, because of it. And then there was like another 2 years where I was like easing back into school. So that was like 12 to 16. And it was kind of only until like well into my 30s that like I then kind of realized like, yeah, like, um, that like I actually joined the dots as to like why I was like sick when I was younger. It was just a sort of like mystery illness that happened like not long after, yeah, um, after that happened in my childhood. So, yeah, so it had a pretty big impact on like my education, and yeah, and then, um, yeah, and then sort of like it was definitely something I had to do a bunch of therapy. Did some like group therapy, with some other men, in this like cool kind of group therapy program, for kind of like childhood survivors. Um, in Ottawa, like based in Ottawa, like it was like we were kind of able to do it like remotely, kind of thing. But that was like really helpful, and then also like a lot of solo therapy too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a yeah, it's a traumatic experience to go through. I know you're certainly not alone in that experience. It happens more often than, could even imagine. Um, I'm curious how some of those early experiences and being in a chaotic environment and experiencing trauma, how that shaped your sense of self early on as a child.
Yeah, it was a good question. I think like early on, it's weird. And yeah, thanks for saying the kind of like it's acknowledging that happens to lots of people is kind of the motivation as to why I felt comfortable kind of chatting about it with you guys, because like I think these kind of experiences are a little bit more common, but like obviously for kind of fairly obvious reasons, like people don't want to necessarily talk about it too much, but hoping kind of some folk get some stuff from realizing that like this does happen in the world a little bit more than we'd like to kind of think about. I think like early on, it's weird. I always kind of like say that it's strange when something like that happens to you as a child, um, in that like you don't, especially when you're kind of not fully formed in your like own identity, in the sense of like you don't really have the language really to kind of like describe what happened to you. Uh, and so it's like, I think in many ways, it's not like quite the same kind of like sense of like violation. Um, because kind of, I think to feel fully like sort of like violated, you've got to have like a kind of intact sense of self. So it's more kind of like warped, I would say, than kind of than sort of violated. So yeah, I think my response to a lot of the kind of chaos, and like stuff that happened, was much more kind of like acquiescence. I guess I kind of just learned to go with the flow, and then it's just kind of sort of like adapt myself to what was happening. And that I think not feeling like I could kind of trust my family to like speak to about like that stuff. Um, and then the kind of, it was kind of off the cards to like kind of bring it up and kind of sort of to advocate for myself. So it's sort of really like left just sort of like adapting to the situation. And so I think, yeah, that was definitely my kind of coping mechanism. Uh, was just kind of, yeah, rolling with the punches.
Yeah, absolutely.
It takes courage and clarity to even be able to go there and speak about it.
Was there at any point a turning point or someone who made you feel safe, or was there a time that you remember kind of a shift where suddenly you went from kind of this chaos and being in a dangerous setting to a place where you felt safe or felt protected or felt heard, seen?
I think there's like two sort of big major shifts. I think like getting just like away from like the UK. I think that was like a pretty big shift kind of thing. And um that was like very like useful. And then I think I just sort of like ran towards the horizon, as it were. Just like picked a spot on the horizon and just like kind of like went. Um and then and then I think I just like kind of then just let my kind of creativity flow. And I think that's I think sort of getting out of the shadow a little bit from like, um, yeah, kind of like my childhood, I guess, like that then kind of, felt really awesome. And like I was a little bit of a wild child. Sort of gained a sense of independence like, at university, and then, that really sort of carried on quite like strongly, like moving over to Montreal, which I loved. Definitely, very like formative, like, in my early 20s, like, being in Montreal, just going around, just like very much kind of like tried to be a part of the like art scene there, and really just kind of, yeah, went kind of like headlong into kind of trying things and doing things, and being in plays, being in burlesque troops, being in like, sci-fi wrestling groups, and yeah. And so I think that was sort of like the first stage, and then I think that worked really well for like a long time. But I still wasn't really kind of like dealing with anything like under the surface. And then sort of then, I think like the pandemic then, had quite an effect on me, I guess, in the sense of like I think that really kind of stops the ability to kind of just like distract myself, and then found myself sort of crying in the shower every day. Realized that like, okay, there's maybe some stuff I need to talk about and unpack here. And then that was probably like then the next turning point of realizing like, okay, there's like a lot here. and like yeah, really kind of like yeah, unpacking that stuff, and then that then sort of then did end up talking about sort of like what happened to me. One, I think just the necessity of having better coping skills, mm, because I had such like an obvious example of like what not to do, and then also kind of the the paucity, I guess, of the coping skills that I had been equipped with from kind of like yeah dealing with like major things like this from kind of my upbringing. And so yeah, so then that kind of like really kind of put a sort of determination in my guts, as it were, in terms of kind of finding a kind of a viable life for myself. Yeah, kind of going forward from then, really, in terms of like taking the therapy really like seriously, and yeah, and yeah, just sort of actually um processing what had happened to me, and like learning to kind of like speak about my experience, and yeah, and having better self-awareness to kind of realize, to kind of rewind some of the kind of the coping, the maladaptive coping skills that I'd kind of taken on over the years, and feeling really good for it after that. So yeah, I guess that's sort of been the major turning points in my life regards to that.
Wow.
Powerful.
And what a comeback you've made.
Well, there we go.
You're an inspiration, definitely, for many, many, many people.
Yeah, thanks.
So, tell us about Oxford. You graduated in physics from Oxford. That itself is a big feather in your hat.
Yeah, that was cool. I liked kind of, yeah, like it was good. I wish, and I guess in some ways I wish I'd made more of it. But whatever. As you can probably tell from what I said, I was a little bit distracted, and coming into uni in a bit of a weird place. But yeah, it was great in some ways. Um, I like, yeah, I loved physics. Always one of my earliest memories was figuring out how a helicopter worked, and the kind of the rush of just like realizing that kind of air pressure was like keeping something like floating up in the air. And it was just like in primary school kind of thing, just like, whoa, hang on, kind of like I was like seeing a fan work, and then kind of, yeah, and realized like, oh, okay, like if you could turn that into a helicopter, right? Okay, I get how a helicopter is working now. And then I think I also just had like a real draw towards like the idea of like original thought, I guess, of just kind of like being on the edge of like the known. And I thought that was so cool, reading the physics books that I was reading, of like different people just kind of like really kind of pioneering like what we understand about the world. And I felt like very much like I wanted to access that like myself, kind of thing. And so yeah, physics was really cool. But then I kind of got my ass handed to me at Oxford. In the sense, it was really hard. And I was a little distracted with partying. Like I got into DJing and making music, and going down to like art shows and music shows in London a lot. So I maybe could have done a bit better at being a better student, kind of thing. Um, yeah, but like it was cool. It was cool. I enjoyed it. I met some cool people there. Um, yeah.
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
So I'm curious how it was kind of navigating those two different worlds of this very elite, rigorous school, and also this party scene, and, being off to London and art and music. And was that something that was, did you feel like those were kind of integrated pieces of yourself, or were they kind of just totally separate?
No, it's very integrated. No, no, I remember. I think it was like during second year. I think it was like looking down at my like watch when I was like at a rave and realizing that like my first lecture was like starting. And that sort of like that sort of like set the tone for the rest of the second year. And so no, I wouldn't say they were very well integrated. I think I think I probably could have done a better job of taking my studies a bit more seriously and actually having times like set aside for when I was going to go partying rather than just finding myself down in London for longer than I should have been. So yeah, and I think that I didn't have I don't think I had a good handle on who I was or what I wanted at that point. So I think I was like very excited to be like doing stuff at that point and felt like I had a bit of like catching up to do on kind of partying and fun stuff like that. So yeah, so um,
But
yeah,
you graduated with your
I
degree,
did. I did.
correct? So that's this huge accomplishment that most people wouldn't be able to do just if they weren't partying the whole time. So I think there's something about you, first of all. And I'm curious, I mean, what did that achievement mean to you, especially, given everything that you'd been through and coming to this pretty monumental place? I mean, that's a huge milestone.
Yeah, it's funny. It didn't mean a lot to me. And then it's and then I sort of yeah has never really sort of meant much to me. I guess if I've like I knew by the end of studying physics that I knew I didn't want to get into physics. Um, I knew that it didn't like satisfy like the like artistic side of myself like enough, like the creative side. And I realized that like to be kind of creative with physics, like you have to kind of be at the very, 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 very top of the field kind of thing. And that kind of most people that are beneath that are kind of inching the science along. And these kind of, you have to wait kind of um, for like a one in a generation, if not like less than one in a generation kind of individual to kind of really push the boundaries. And I'm not that person. I feel totally fine to kind of, to have realized and, the kind of a bit more kind of grunt work in the trenches, like physics didn't really like appeal to me, so much. I think I would like try and get into a conversation about a cool piece of art or some like poetry that had like rocked my world, um, with like, yeah, kind of other physicists and them kind of looking at me a bit strangely. No, that I didn't, there was some really cool, wonderful characters and really cool, um, creative folks in physics too, who are doing different stuff. But I guess it wasn't scratching the itch for me by the kind of third year. So I guess I kind of already knew that I was like done with it, and I felt like um, I guess I felt like a bit of a failure in that like I didn't feel like I'd done my best as I could have with it. So I was just sort of like, all right, like let's move on to the next thing. Um, and I never went to my graduation. And
Oh, really?
no.
Wow. Right. That's fascinating.
Well, what about the other side then? I mean, this being in kind of the party scene, DJing. I mean, clearly this was providing something that Oxford was not. And so I'm curious what that brought to you in terms of, community, music, movement, all of those pieces.
Yeah, that was really cool, I guess. There was like definitely some things that I learned. I loved DJing because and like putting on music nights. I'd been in a few bands and like um but the thing I didn't like about like performing music in like a band was like everyone was looking at you and like super focused on you. Whereas I really liked that with the DJing you were just like making the music happen and sending people inside themselves, like on an experience. And I super love that. I love that if I did a good job like in the booth, then like everyone would, like when I went out, was just kind of like had their eyes closed, was like flowing and grooving and kind of like I really, really enjoyed that like aspect of it. And it definitely cemented for me that like and I think I've kind of held true to this, and this is maybe where I've just learned to kind of incorporate these worlds, is that kind of refuse to pick kind of like science or like kind of art and kind of creativity. Like I've always got to be hitting those two sides of myself at the same time kind of thing. There's not one side of that I kind of put on the back burner. Um, and yeah, I think that kind of, I knew that I kind of wanted to take a bit of a step away from the kind of like the kind of wild partying side of kind of the DJing, but in terms of like the art and the kind of performance and stuff like that, like um I knew I wanted more of that, and that I think really like shaped a lot of my like experiences in Montreal.
You also have this close relationship with food. You're a phenomenal chef
Yeah, I
and
love.
deep understanding of food, and you're willing to explore. Like, I know you love South Indian food. I come from. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, well,
Chefing you've done.
yeah, well, I guess I've worked in kitchens quite a lot. It was my like go-to job whenever I needed money, because like you can always kind of in a new town, in a new spot, you can like always be kind of guaranteed that you can kind of get a job in the kitchen. So kind of yeah, like where before I kind of got like you know got going on my kind of career path, that was like yeah, what I did to make money and to kind of fund myself through my adventures. And a lot of that I did because I felt like I had deficiencies in kind of like I could get distracted easily and different stuff like that. So I kind of wanted a job that would like kick my ass and like kind of help strengthen some weaknesses, I guess. Um and yeah, that was good, but I think, yeah, as much as, being in the kitchen, I haven't missed too much. I've always kept the kind of like the cooking. I guess I super love it as an expression of love, I guess, as like an expression of like care for the people around you, that I can kind of like explore this thing that's like satisfies my like my creative impulses. But that, like, just brings people together and, is such, like, a necessary part of every day, that, like, it's something, most of us do 2, 3 times a day kind of thing. So I feel like if you're gonna do something 2, 3 times a day, you might as well make it kind of, yeah, like, exceptional. Like, you should just, that's such like a kind of a source of joy, that we can kind of give ourselves. And I suppose I love I'm drawn towards things that give me a sense of independence. And so I like the fact that, I could do that. It was definitely, a fun thing kind of, when I was like younger and poorer, I guess, with I could like always kind of put on the table with like friends that, if they wanted to go buy some ingredients, I'd like happily cook them up kind of thing. So I got known for like cooking up like Sunday roasts for my friends, and doing like Sunday roast clubs, which was like really fun. And then yeah, I just love that I can just kind of disappear into the kitchen and, super focus on just like little creation. Um, and that, yeah, just seeing how much kind of people appreciate that kind of care that you kind of, care and attention that you can kind of give to food. I think I always hold dear to me. I try these days to stay very much, close to the kind of the grandma wisdom of food is what I call it. So the holy trinity of cooking, which is, cheap, delicious and healthy kind of thing. Like how can you hit those three? I try not to get too caught up on the, like cooking dishes like they, coming out of a restaurant kind of thing. I think you can learn a lot of cool techniques from like restaurant techniques, but I then try and temper that with kind of like yeah, kind of like cheapness and healthiness. And so yeah, I feel like grandmas are the experts.
It's beautiful. What prompted your move out of UK and towards Canada?
Very little other than like, yeah, I just kind of knew that I just wanted to get away and go, like find myself, I guess, yeah, and as I said, just kind of pick a point on the horizon. Uh, and in terms of like why Canada, I was just looking for a place. I knew that I didn't want it to be feeling so foreign that I felt that um, it would make an amazing holiday, but not like sustainable to like be there kind of longer term. You know, there's like plenty of places that I would like love to visit for like 2 weeks, even a month, but feel like I'd probably get exhausted after a month. Um, and so I knew I wanted to kind of go for you know, potentially like find a new spot in the world for me kind of thing. And then Canada was the young person's working holidays. And I knew that Arcade Fire were from Montreal, and I knew that Neil Young was from Canada. And that was like pretty much my reasons.
That's lovely.
So how was it landing? What was your kind of immigration story on that?
Oh my goodness. Crazy, crazy. Why I had been looking for a place to. Well, I've been going on Craigslist because this is kind of me to find me something. Um, and the trouble was is like, so I was looking for a place to rent on Craigslist, but like I knew that some of the stuff on there was like a scam, but because like I had no real like working knowledge of the city or anything like that, like it was very hard for me to like like dissect like what was a scam and what wasn't kind of thing. Except this one post came along that was very cheap, but also crazy that like I knew couldn't be a scam. Like it was a place that had just recently been a BDSM dungeon, and that used to be, but that still had all the trimmings. So there was like mirrors on the ceiling. There was like places where people like there was places where you could like, attach ropes on the like breakfast bar. So clearly people had tied up there before. There was like a coffin hanging around. Yeah, it was nuts. It was so nuts.
Oh my God.
That is an immigration story I have not heard. So
No, but
Oh my God, but it wasn't a scam, right? Like it was ranting that like it definitely wasn't a scam. But yeah, and like came kind of like fresh off the boat as it were, except off the plane. And then went and met my like roommates who were lovely and met me at the train station, and like we cycled over to the place, and it was just like a big giant loft where we were kind of like responsible for like and sectioning things off and building walls to like make make our own bedrooms and stuff like that in it. And yeah, it certainly like helped me land in the city in the art scene with a bit of a crash and a bang kind of thing. And that like everyone that I met thought it was really cool that I was in these like kind of quite infamous lofts. They were down by the train tracks. Um, and there was like opposite, there was like heavy metal bands that were like constantly like practicing, and they were doing this like psychedelic festival, um, like yeah, down by the train tracks, and So yeah, it was kind of slap banging kind of like Montreal, like art scene. And it was really cool. I moved with yeah, um, some cool people. And then got like quite quickly introduced to like the art scene in Montreal, and that kind of was really my like focus for a good while. I joined a queer burlesque troupe, that initially just to help out and be one of their stagehands, and then ended up being the lead in one of their plays they were putting on, and then yeah, that was a formative experience. Really fun. It was really cool in that like the troupe, down productions. I don't think they do anything anymore. Like yeah, if you were around in Montreal at a certain time, then they're definitely a little bit influenced in the city. It was like um, a bunch of folks from Newfoundland, um, who just had like left Newfoundland. I guess like a little bit similar to myself, kind of like left home, wanting some liberation and kind of like fun ventures. And they just had a really cool like ethic that I really enjoyed, which was like um, they didn't really care about being sexy. It was more about fun, liberation, and goofy, and that like if you had an idea, um, they would kind of help you like shape it, and that basically kind of anything goes, as it were. So I think the rest of the more classical burlesque scene pretty much rolled their eyes at us. We weren't all nipple tassels. We were a bit more, uh, uh, um, yeah, just wild and goofy. Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you miss those days?
Yes. I wouldn't say I missed it, but I look back at it fondly for sure. I think I'm happy to have moved forward, but yeah, I was very many times that would be the same person without those guys, and it was pretty fun. And that then led me on to probably one of the biggest like artistic achievements I had, which was kind of like a group of us artists from that like splintered off and formed like a sci-fi wrestling league, and that ended up we had quite a reliable sort of decent sized audience, and that kind of we got interviewed by like Vice and like CBC and different folks that really that kind of captured people's imaginations. I guess like Glam Gam is a bit more just like a fun night out. Um, like people were invested in the sci-fi wrestling, and they
Your early days of fame just took off from there.
never been too shy in front of an audience.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And then tell us about your foray into tech. How did you get in, and what drew you into hacking?
Yeah, I guess while everything was happening, when I moved to Montreal, like before, in fact, moving to Montreal, like I like started teaching myself how to build websites, and it was kind of like pre Wix, pre kind of all these different tools, but now you can build a website so easily, kind of thing. And like everybody wanted a website, kind of thing. So I basically just like taught myself how to build websites, and then like the restaurant that I was like working in pitched that I would do their website again because they weren't very happy with their web developer, and kind of offered them like a fairly cheap price just to get going. And that ended up being a really smart decision because they went for it. I was basically just completely teaching myself. I think I was 2 weeks into learning development at the point. And then they actually had like a local web development company pitched them a website, who came into the restaurant, and they said, no, we've like actually got one of our chefs in the kitchen is doing us a website. And then they said, oh, do you mind if we meet him? So I met with them, and then ended up working for them. And that was just like HTML and CSS kind of stuff. So I'm saying you should know that, but that's just like, that's like kind of very basic front end kind of websites kind of thing. And then basically, I've just been kind of working my way further into the back end since then. So at the beginning, I was just kind of doing whatever. I was, I somehow managed to get this job. I think they didn't have many people that could do this work themselves, so they didn't really fully know how to to conduct an interview. So I sort of managed to blag the interview. Okay. And then I was just good enough to know what I should and shouldn't commit to during meetings.
Mm.
Uh, and that I would have like a vague sense of the complexity of stuff. So I was like good at kind of making sure that I didn't bite off too much more than I could chew. And then whenever we'd then commit to something in a meeting, I would have to sort of come back to my desk and like turn the monitor away from them and frantically giggle. How the hell to do that? You just agreed that I would like do for whatever client kind of thing. But it actually was fine. I kind of managed to stay ahead of kind of schedule of delivery. I wasn't the bottleneck, so it was okay. And yeah, and then just then when I moved to Montreal, I just kind of continued to teach myself more and more languages. And then I got a job working in like an ad tech company, because I had like built a website for, and like that, the website I built it actually had a more kind of complicated back end. And that was for a guy who's really well connected, and he got me a job at his company, and that was like an ad tech company. And there I really learned my like craft, I would say. That was like 4,000 web requests every second.
Oh,
And so like if you kind of didn't build something right, it like set on fire within about like 5 minutes of like deploying it. So um that was good. There's definitely one key learning experience I think I had where I just like completely made a mess, chose completely the wrong technology, like had to hold my hands up and be like, I messed this up, but also like I'm gonna fix this, and had to like properly apply my like first principles thinking to like actually not just throw some technology at a problem, but like understand what I was doing and be like targeted with like what I was implementing. It was like it was a like a click tracking system, so that like, you would like serve up all these ads like over the last like say month. And then when someone like clicked on an ad, like you'd need to like kind of join it to the like initial like impression you showed of the advert. And they wanted it where they could like go back in time quite a lot kind of thing. You can imagine you've got 4,000 requests a second coming in, like they'd pile up. So you have a big pile of them. And like I was trying to use like traditional databases to like put the data in, thinking I'd chosen like a fancy thing and that like it would be able to handle it. And I think it started costing us like many thousands of dollars each month, and realized like, and it was still like crashing all the time. And then I realized, hang on, I can build this. And I think I took the cost down to $40 a month, and it never crashed and was really, really fast. And that was just like from like first principles thinking. And I think after that, I was like, cool, okay, like that's like, this was one of my biggest failures turned into one of my biggest successes kind of thing in terms of, and all I had to do was just like apply that, like the kind of stuff I'd learned from like physics of just like, let's take a problem and like start from the fundamentals and like and build it up kind of thing. So yeah.
amazing.
So that Oxford degree came in handy somewhere, at least somewhere in life.
And then I finally started like getting around to actually like applying myself a little bit again.
Amazing.
So what was it? What drew you into this ethical hacking, and how did you decide to try and hack Microsoft Identity Service? Sorry, and what was that whole experience?
Yeah. So the kind of security research, the kind of like hacking stuff has like been a little bit newer, I guess. I'd like I did like software engineering. I kind of got into data engineering and AI and stuff like that. Enjoyed that whole like aspect of things, but was just like a few years ago, I was just kind of like really looking for like a new challenge. And like I was like applying like kind of data engineering skills to this like cybersecurity company that I joined. But like we were sort of a bit of a startup inside of the company. Um, and it meant that I kind of had to wear quite a few different hats. And I found myself kind of needing to understand like quite a lot of different cloud services and like how to kind of yeah, like how to kind of piece together how they work from that kind of again like first principles in terms of like the like how identities, which is just like users, but it could also be like applications too, like how they end up having like privileges and being able to do things. And obviously, in the hands of hackers, they're often leveraging those like privileges to then do something that like they shouldn't be able to do by kind of like chaining together a series of kind of like relationships. And so I kind of again went back to my like physics and I like started treating that as like a kind of as a graph problem. And like graph can have a bit of a few meanings to different people. So to kind of mathematicians, graphs are this idea of like you've probably seen them as diagrams where you've got like circles that are called like nodes, or they don't have to be circles, but like kind of entities that are nodes, and they've got like edges over to other nodes. And then if it's like a directed edge, that will have like a direction to the edge. So it could be that, hey, this user is a member of a group, and this group gets assigned like a security role, and that role has some privilege. So you kind of start from your kind of identity and you go to like your kind of like privilege. And I started basically just like modeling like, yeah, like all of these different domains in this kind of methodology that I started to develop for kind of, yeah, how to kind of like generically put that together. We actually just submitted a patent application for it just last week, so that's fun. And and then I just found that work kind of way more fun than like the data engineering. The data engineering had like gone like just like a little bit stale, I guess. Like, wasn't finding myself like as into it. I've always been more of a fan of like specific customer problems than I've ever been of like understanding technologies. Kind of like technologies for me has always been like a kind of a means to an end. But the thing that I've always really enjoyed is like having a kind of specific problem that someone cares about solving. Um, and then what happened is like, like because, because I work at a cybersecurity company, we kind of, work with various different like partners. And then one partner went, hey, something weird has happened in my environment. Can you guys take a look at it? We took a look at it as a team. Um, we're very confused for a little bit. Then we finally figured out like what was the root cause of that. And then it was weird, but not necessarily like, can you do something malicious with it? And then Microsoft are a little bit infamous with being very conservative in their opinions of what might be abusable in their systems. So they sort of turned around and was like, hey, this is a feature, which it was like they definitely built it as a feature, but sort of like refused to acknowledge that like anything bad could come of it. And it to everyone who kind of came across it, it had like a bit of a bad smell, I guess. And then that sort of lit a bit of a fire under me, I guess. And I was like I think, as I told you before, the idea of like going into the unknown, I definitely find super appealing. And the idea of proving Microsoft wrong, I also find very appealing. Those two factors combined to me yeah, just they're like, all right, like it's on like Donkey Kong. let's let's have a go and see kind of from this premise of this kind of bad smell. Let's see if I can do something bad with it. And yeah, I kind of proved that there was a bunch of kind of theoretical abuses, and then just yeah, a little while ago, just like dropped a blog explaining how you could actually turn it into a full concrete attack. And yeah, so that's been fun. Caused a little ripple, I guess. Not huge, but a little ripple in the world of Microsoft identity services.
Going by the response, it's more than just a ripple. You it did quite a splash. And how did Microsoft react to it? And one more question I have is when, as a layman, when I hear about ethical hackers or even hackers, I imagine someone sitting with 20 screens around them, high-tech gadgets. So how do you work?
It's funny. It's funny, yeah. So like a lot of people have most people have multiple monitors, but I guess because of my previous days of being a freelancer with my little 13-inch laptop kind of thing, I get super overwhelmed by too many screens. Like I do have multiple screens now, but actually I feel like some of my best work is when I unplug from that and I'm just being super dialed in with my one screen. That I'm not constantly managing different contexts and different stuff. Or just got one thing in front of me. I can alt tab to swap what I'm looking at. 4 million browsers sometimes open. But yeah, yeah, yeah. So but yeah. So I'm a little bit different on that front. But yeah, yeah. It's good fun. It's good fun. But yeah, I guess I these days I'm just kind of on my laptop, just picking apart weird, just just using some tools to see what's kind of really trying to reverse engineer what's happening behind the scenes with kind of Microsoft's cloud services, and then just trying to kind of see if something seems like a bad smell, and then once something looks like a little bit off, then doing more investigation. Often you just get a little bit more educated on something, and then sometimes you get more educated on something, but it's still off, and you keep on going deeper, and it's more off, and then you can kind of start piecing together a way to actually abuse something. And yeah, so yeah, good fun.
You not like you are a celebrity in the cybersecurity world now, the tech security. What are you working on next? I know that you're going to speak at DEF CON in Vegas soon.
Yes.
There's something else that you're working on, some other big news coming up.
So yeah, DEF CON's gonna be fun. DEF CON's one of the biggest hacker conferences out there. Which is which is gonna be really cool. I'm really looking forward to it. It's yeah, it sounds utter madness. It's in kind of the Las Vegas convention center. So it's huge, thousands upon thousands of people. Yeah, sounds and all it's a very kind of loose use of the word hacking, and you've got biohackers and actual security researchers and all kinds of different weird and wonderful folks. So I'm super looking forward to that. I've got a few fun exclusives for that. I've understood a few evasion techniques for the attack that I done dropped recently. So that's gonna be fun. I'm gonna be talking about that at DEF CON. So that's just a bit more of an extension of what I did before. So evasion just means that pulling off the attack without getting detected by defenders security systems. So so that's just taking an existing attack and trying to make it as sneaky as possible. So yeah, just how can you avoid alerts and different things like that would pop up from doing something weird in the system. I think you asked before how Microsoft have responded. Microsoft have been really cool. I actually got to chat with one of their principal security researchers who was a really, really nice guy. Really, really cool guy. And he said that behind the scenes had made them yeah, like yeah, like they like were thinking about like the work that I'd done, and definitely it was nice to hear that in the sense of like um yeah, just that that they were taking the work seriously, and that like it had um they were figuring out how to like make people more secure as a result, which is like ultimately the goal. As much as you can have fun and get attached to these different exploits that you find, like it's, you know, it's ultimately about like finding these things and sharing them in a responsible way, so that then you know, people have a chance to fix this stuff. And yeah, it gets a little bit murky when you have something like what happened, where like initially they say there's like a feature kind of thing, but then I think the following work that I did kind of as much as they still need to keep that like feature in place because that's like useful to places, I think they're like figuring out ways where they can deliver that feature but in more secure ways. So it was cool to have some recognition of that from one of their researchers. So that was really cool. And then yeah, more stuff. Like continuing to kind of like work on stuff for the company that I'm working for in like different domains. But definitely starting to find something cool and weird, I think, in Microsoft Cloud Services again. But unfortunately, I can't say very much. It could be significant, and might be the deeper I go. Like, it turns out to not be very significant, but unfortunately, part of being an ethical hacker is you have to like you have to exercise responsible disclosure, which is that you give the person who wrote the software the chance to fix it before you end up talking about it publicly. So Right. So I can't give too many details, but yeah, hopefully more fun stuff. I really feel like I found my calling with this stuff. It feels like a really cool synthesis of the creative side of me and the like the technical side. So I feel like I get to like kind of really nerd out, like understanding these like systems from a real like deep kind of technical place, but then have fun breaking them, which like really satisfies the creative side of it. So yeah.
Wow. Of course, we can't probe anymore, and Eve had your security to think about. What about a message for budding white hat ethical hackers?
Well, you know, like I'm kind of new on my journey, as so I guess I'm like talking to myself a little bit too. But I think like I think like the thing that I'm like taking from these like early experiences is that like not to be like too intimidated by like what you don't know. I guess like I've always been okay with that with like physics, in that like my kind of physics background of like I've always just kind of felt fairly confident that like with kind of a first principles approach, like you can kind of take on like any problem kind of thing. Um, but it is intimidating. It is intimidating when there's like all these like weird kind of protocols and different like very kind of specific knowledge that like you don't know, and that like can feel like you're not qualified to kind of try and get involved with until you understand all that stuff like deeply. Um, and understanding that stuff deeply is really important, but at the same time, I think you can get stuck in, and that like if something seems like it's maybe a bad smell, like just go for it and explore it and like try ripping it apart. Just like, and like the worst that you're going to undo is like understand that you were wrong about it, and that like, you know, then you're a little bit smarter for the next thing. And that like already I found that like, you know, spending a whole kind of week going down a certain rabbit hole that didn't end up going very deep, you know, then I'm trying you know, trying something later on and that seems a bit unrelated. And then I go, hang on, wait, I was learning about this like, you know, for a week and I didn't think this was like bad, but now I'm seeing this in this context. Like, hang on, you know, like, could I combine these ideas or just, you know, that like basically none of that effort's ever really wasted kind of thing. when you kind of like take the time to like understand something. So I think like, yes, take the time to understand things, but also just kind of get stuck in. And like, I had a really good boss who, one of his big questions that I really liked that kind of formed my thinking was like, how come you have like companies like MGM casinos, right, who spend like millions on like defending their cybersecurity. They have whole departments full of people. They've got people to do compliance. They've got people who are looking through all of their logs, like implementing detection rules to see like if anyone's doing anything strange. They have like they spend thousands, like hundreds of thousands of dollars on like tooling, to, you know, for these teams to do their job, and they get hacked by a bunch of teenagers. I'm like, oh, and like this is, you know, and it's not just them, like, you know, this is like a tale as old of time. It's like, you know, some teenagers take out, you know, whatever kind of thing, and like I've really tried to kind of actually keep that as like one of my kind of tenets, I guess, as it were, of like doing like cybersecurity research is like think like a teenager. You know, don't get
Right.
too caught up in your like adult ego. Don't you know, I feel like lots of like the kind of adult ego kind of is like, you know, well, no, I know the system and I know how it's supposed to work. And like, you know, I've read like pages upon pages of documentation, but like you can read all the documentation you like. As soon as you notice something weird that's like, that seems off, like, and that like something, you know, you need to give up on all of that stuff and be like, well, maybe that's what it says in the documentation, but like, I've just run an experiment that's like, um, that's showing that it doesn't quite behave like that. And that like, I think teenagers are very good at this stuff because they're often motivated that they just want to kind of like, you know, pwn Microsoft or get in, you know, like, or maybe even for completely selfish reasons of like, you know, we want to go do some ransomware attack or whatever kind of thing. But they're excited. They've got that passion, which I think is really important to have, even if it's for completely nefarious reasons. Um, and then they're just trying things and they don't have like an attachment, and they're kind of prepared to use whatever tooling and whatever works. And there's like a famous adage as well, which is like, you know, an attacker only needs like one thing to work, whereas the defenders have to make sure that like everything works kind of thing, to keep them out kind of thing. So like, definitely the attackers have got some things in their favor, but I also think like if people thought like teenagers a little bit more, in the kind of serious business world, they'd actually be more secure, which is kind of funny. So I try and bring that. I try and represent the like the kind of the reckless teenager.
Yeah, I've heard this where they say that knowledge and experience are barriers to imagination and creativity.
Yes, I definitely think that that works, especially with complex systems, especially with complex systems that people paid kind of like, you know, hundreds of thousands to be experts in. You know, it's like hard not to want to come across as like credible at your kind of, you know, at your professional craft if you're being paid like, you know, hundred thousands of dollars kind of thing. Um, and so, yeah. And I think often with that then comes a certain kind of rigidity, of like, you know, I know my stuff kind of thing. But honestly, like, yeah, I feel like there's just so much for me to learn. I've literally just kind of like emerged into the scene kind of thing. I would in no way say I'm established. I would say I'm like emerging. But loving it, absolutely loving it. It's really good fun.
That's so humble of you. So, I'm just trying to. You can add in if you like. DJ, Oxford grad, burlesque performer, sci-fi wrestling performer, chef, website maker, ethical hacker. What's next for Simon?
Curiosity, always. Well, that's the one constant. That's the one constant. Curiosity. So you don't know what's next, right? But you keep on I don't know. I guess I have. I think you said this one time, Vin. You've got to have a few bedposts, as it were, some things to anchor you. So I guess one of my things is curiosity for sure. So where that takes me, I don't know, but that's what I quite like about that. I think definitely I want to kind of carry on this kind of craft of kind of hacking. I really feel like I'm just getting going, and I feel like it's kind of combining together quite a few aspects of myself, which I think kind of suit me. I think I've got an okay mind for. So yeah, so definitely think that. I I think like I think relationships are really important to me in terms of that's one of my kind of bedposts I wear, I guess, is like trying to be kind of um make sure that I have like good people around me, and that like I tend to those relationships. I've definitely in the past you know, been just pinging around everywhere and like not attended to them as much as I should have. So these days I'm trying to kind of be fully accountable to my relationships, I guess, and hold that as like a constant in my life. Who knows where that will take me? Um, I'm super enjoying. I did my first marathon this year,
Oh,
which was really cool. So I think definitely want to. I like super loved the kind of the physical kind of challenge and things like that. So I think I want some more fun stuff like that. Hoping towards the end of the year to do another marathon. Um, and yeah, yeah. Who knows? Who knows after that?
that's something else we have in common besides so many other things like philosophy, cooking, casting. She's a half marathon. I used to be a cross country. So, running is a passion enough family also.
Thank
I think.
Which
Let's go for a run sometime.
For sure.
One more question.
Okay.
Did you have a name as a DJ?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also have a name as a hacker. So my name as a DJ was, I had a few monikers. There was like Simon Auden. I think there's still SoundCloud going around with Simon Auden. There was Octopus, but spelled with a 7, which is very confusing. Like 0C70PUS. Yeah. Yeah, that was one of my DJ monikers. And then these days I'm hacking under the name Kidtronics. So that's
Vintronics, awesome.
Nice.
Perfect. So fun.
and yeah, I'm on Twitter. So if you're ever curious about any of my cybersecurity adventures, you can find me as Kidtronics.
Good. I'm going to look
Awesome.
for you right away.
Okay. All right.
It's been beautiful, Simon. Thank you. I mean, you shared so much, and there's just so much that there's a lot to you. You know, you're like this onion who one keeps peeling, and you find another layer and another layer and another layer. And it's just been beautiful. Just knowing you, being able to call you my friend, is a privilege. It's really a privilege, and I'm grateful to have you in my life.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say, and I very much feel the same way about you guys too. It's definitely a privilege knowing you both. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me today.
Oh, such a pleasure. Thank you, brother. It's been awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Lovely chatting with you both.